All right, and we are back. That was one of my favorite broadcasters, Joe Bowen, giving us the origin story of Rod Langway.
And fittingly, we're going to now move on to the Eastern Conference. Of course, Rod Langway played his entire career in the East. Most of it spent in the Old Patrick Division, which I guess the closest approximation to that now would be the Metro Division.
Yeah, so let's start there in the Metro. We'll start as we did in the West with the bottom. So what is the bottom team here in the Metro Division?
I think it's unanimous for the three of us. The Columbus Blue Jackets will probably be bringing up the rear and obviously playing with heavy hearts this year at the tragic passing of Johnny Gaudreau.
Yes, we did touch upon this in our summer show. The depth of the tragedy was not evident at that point. I mean, what a tragic event. The Columbus Blue Jackets will be keeping his stall with his jersey there, so that's a very classy move.
And I thought it was really classy of the Philadelphia Flyers head coach, John Tortorella, who apparently the two boys grew up idolizing that team. He invited the father, Guy Gaudreau, out to run a practice, so I thought that was a really cool move.
Yeah, it was. It's certainly going to be a challenge year in Columbus on many levels, but there is some room for optimism here because they've got the 2023 third pick overall Adam Fantilli entering his sophomore season. I'm really excited to see what he can bring this year.
Yes, and Kent Johnson, he had a little bit of a setback last year, but he's a really promising player.
Yeah, there were a lot of trade rumors swirling around him, but he's sticking around for another year. I think he's going to get plenty of opportunity to show what he can do.
Yeah, and they do still have their veteran players. Boone Jenner is a stalwart back there. Zach Werenski on the blue line. He had a great year last year, actually. One of the bright spots on the team.
I like the acquisition of Sean Monahan. I think there's a veteran who's going to really stabilize things. Center was a position of need for them, and he was one of the best centers available on the market.
They still have Marchenko. He had a really nice year last year.
And on the blue line, they have another young prospect, David Juracek. He's primed to maybe take a step forward this year for them.
And Elvis is still in the building.
Yeah, he would like to leave the building, but no takers so far with that big contract. I think he's probably the second option right now because Daniel Tarasov has taken the reign as starter, and he looks like the future for Columbus in net.
Certainly going to be a tough year in Columbus, but there are some bright spots in the future. Of course, the passing of Gaudreau, I think, will be on a lot of players' minds this year.
Next, let's talk about one of the biggest surprise teams of last season, the Philadelphia Flyers.
Yeah, I mean, they had that great start, but wow, did they fall apart in the end, narrowly missing the playoffs. You got to wonder if the hangover of that collapse is going to loom large in this season.
I think it could. However, they did add one of the most exciting additions, I would say, in the whole league this year with Matvei Mishkov. This is a guy that arguably would have gone number 2 last year. I think is front runner for Rookie of the Year and has looked absolutely lights out in the preseason.
Yeah, he did drop to number 7 in the 2023 entry draft, but you're right. He was considered to be the second best player behind Bedard. 7 points in 4 preseason games so far. This is a guy who could come in and be a point-a-game player right off the bat.
Yeah, so beyond Mishkov, I mean, what do they have for scoring?
Yeah, so this is where things get a little bit dicey. Now, they did lock up Travis Konechny long-term. He's a nice player. You could probably pencil him in for about 65 to 70 points, which is solid. You've also got a guy like Owen Tippett who's coming off a 27 and then a 28-goal season. Maybe he can go 30 this year. But beyond that, there's not a lot of high-end offensive talent.
And what about their blue line?
Well, maybe they can get some offensive contribution from their blue line. I mean, they have young Jamie Drysdale, young Cam York. Travis Sanheim had a decent offensive year last year. So maybe their offense can be a little bit augmented from the back end.
Still lots of questions in net. Carter Hart is gone, and they do have Samuel Arison and Ivan Fedotov.
Yeah, I don't know. Arison did play well. He kind of broke down near the end of the season because they played him too much. Fedotov hasn't really shown much. I know he looked pretty good in the KHL, but I'd be worried about that goaltending situation.
Yeah, I just sort of wonder in general how much of this team's success was sort of lightning captured in a bottle last year. Can they replicate any of this at all?
Yeah, one last X factor for me is the captain, Sean Couturier, who was a healthy scratch at the end of last season after looking like he might revive his career early in the year. Hopefully he can come in healthy this year and give them a full 82 games of productive hockey.
That would be huge for them.
Yeah, probably too many questions, but we'll see what John Tortorella can get out of these guys.
Okay, well, let's move on here from one fiery coach to another. The New York Islanders' Patrick Waugh is behind the bench. This team has been a perennial overachiever. What do we expect out of these guys this year?
Yeah, well, once Patrick Waugh took over last year, they went on a tear. and snuck into the playoffs. So a lot of people are excited to see what Patrick Waugh can do with a full training camp and a full year with his team.
I'm really curious to see what happens in net.
Yeah.
Varlamov ended up getting most of the starts down the stretch over Sorokin.
Yeah, I mean, Sorokin was sort of touted as one of the best goalies in the world, and I think he still probably is. I do expect him to take that job back, but that is not a for sure thing.
No, well, he's been dealing with back issues in the offseason, so he might not even be ready to start the season. So, yeah, it could be a bit of a platoon situation early on anyway.
Do they have enough on their blue line?
Well, they have an excellent young defender in Noah Dobson. He had his breakout season last year. They're going to need more of the same from him because beyond that, not a lot of offense coming from the back end.
And the law firm is back in business.
Yeah, Ryan Pulak and Adam Pelech. I mean, they're still a stalwart defensive pair back there. They can really shut down a team's offense.
I think another dimension of that defensive prowess comes from the centermen. So you got guys like Bo Horvat, Brock Nelson, Jean-Gabriel Pageau, and Casey Cizikas. You could do worse than that for a 1-4 combo.
For sure, but there's not a lot of scoring punch in that center depth.
Yeah, well, Nelson can score 30, but beyond him, they're really hoping for a guy named Maxim Siplikov, who they brought in from the KHL. He's a big guy, 6'3", 210, only 25 years old, so maybe he can add some scoring punch.
Yes, and I'm also wondering about their new addition of Anthony Duclair. I know he had to shave his goatee because of Lou Lamoriello's policy, but he's got some speed.
Yeah, he was good down the stretch last year in Tampa Bay after he was acquired. So, he's been getting first-line minutes. Maybe that works out.
Yeah, and I mean, another year of Matt Barzal on the wing, that's a better spot for him. So we'll see what he can produce this year.
Still, though, I think overall, not so much to be excited about in Long Island. They might be one of those bubble teams, but I don't see them going much further.
Next up, let's talk about the Pittsburgh Penguins and Sidney Crosby. He's locked up for another couple of years.
Yeah, $8.7 million. I think it's a great number for Sid. It does open up the possibility of him being a Penguin for life, which I think would be great for him and the team.
I don't think that's set in stone, though. I think that number would be a movable number if things go sideways this year. Trade speculation could ramp up pretty quickly.
Well, and of course, the band is back together. Geno Malkin is there. He had a hat trick in a nice game in Sudbury in the preseason.
That was really cool to see.
Yeah, it was really fun. Obviously, Chris Letang is back. Erik Karlsson is back for his second season in Pittsburgh. So, I mean, basically everyone's back together. Same thing as last year. So what can we expect out of the same group?
Well, number one, hopefully they stay healthy.
Well, that's the thing, Jeff. They stayed healthy last year, and it still wasn't enough to get them into the playoffs. So I just don't see where that extra push is going to come from. Maybe it's a new addition they brought in?
Well, they did bring in Rutger McGroarty from the Winnipeg Jets. I mean, this is a guy who thinks he is NHL ready. Whether or not he is remains to be seen, but I think he's going to get a crack at the lineup at least.
Yeah, a couple other guys in the bargain basement bin were grabbed. Guys like Cody Glass and Kevin Hayes was brought in as a reclamation project. Another one, Anthony Beauvillier. These are all kind of long shots. Maybe one of them hits.
They still have Brian Rust.
Yeah, a pretty solid player. I think he's still a top 1 or 2 line player.
Yeah, but how much of that is just playing with Sidney Crosby? I don't know. I just think that's more Sid than it is Brian Rust.
Raquel.
Yes, Ricard Raquel. Again, a guy that sometimes gets injured, was relatively healthy last year. I like him. He brings some grit, brings some goal scoring.
Yeah. I mean, when I look up and down this roster, I think it's pretty solid bubble team territory type roster.
And in net, they are returning the duo of Tristan Jarry and Alex Nedeljkovic.
Again, mediocre. Kind of fitting, I guess. I think this will be a mediocre team with mediocre goaltending.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was reasonably solid. Jarry got quite a few shutouts last year, as I remember. So if they could
started out strong.
Nedeljkovic
was decent down the stretch.
And I think Ned is a pretty decent backup. So this team is probably a bubble team as they were last year.
Yeah, I think Wonder Boy Kyle Dubas is going to have to pull some mid-season magic, maybe shake things up with a deal, because otherwise I see a team that misses the playoffs for the third season in a row.
Okay, so next I think we have to talk about the Pittsburgh Penguins' perennial rivals, the Washington Capitals.
Yeah.
Yes. Rod Langway's former team, Stephen Carberry, got those guys in the playoffs, one of the biggest surprises last year, and they had a really busy offseason.
Yeah, they're going for it again. They made some moves. I like the acquisition of Pierre-Luc Dubois. Now, I know on the face it's a big risk because that's a lot of money, but they got him for pennies on the dollar. They sent out their own failed acquisition, Darcy Kemper, in that trade. I don't know. I think that even if he gives you 55, 60 points, it's a big win.
And they got another former Flame.
Yes, they did. They brought in Andrew Mangiapane. Yeah, I mean, he brings some goal-scoring acumen and a little bit of speed to a slower, older team.
Yeah, speaking of a little bit more youth, a little bit more speed, Hendrix Lapierre, I think, is a guy that can provide a lot more this year. And Connor McMichael's another guy they're expecting a lot from. So it's not all old guys in Washington.
Charlie Lindgren was a revelation last year, and he is a new backup this year.
He sure does. Logan Thompson, they acquired from the Vegas Golden Knights. I think he's going to be a very serviceable backup. And if Lindgren falters, I could even see him taking over the starting job.
And the goalies will get some protection from a couple of new blue liners as they add Jacob Chikrin and Matt Roy.
Yeah, I mean, these are both legitimate top four defenders. I really like Chikrin's upside. I don't know what happened in Ottawa. He was there for a short time.
That was weird.
Yeah, they send him packing for Nick Jensen.
They still have Rasmus Sandin.
That's another guy, a guy that they got on the cheap from Toronto. So yeah, actually there's some potential in that blue line. Of course, John Carlson returns as the anchor of that blue line. If he's healthy, he's still a legitimate number one guy.
Yeah, I think if everything goes right for this blue line, it could be really, really good.
And the big question will be up front as Alexander Ovechkin continues his quest to chase down Wayne Gretzky's goal record.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of exhausted by this story. Honestly, I'd like to see Wayne keep the record forever, but I think after what we saw from Ovi in the second half, it's just a matter of time now that he eclipses Wayner.
I agree. I'm a little tired of this too. It's been going on for years already, and it's probably going to go on for this season, probably next season as well. So yeah, we'll just keep counting the goals as they come in.
Yeah, 41 to go. Dylan Strom's going to have to do his best Nicholas Backstrom impersonation.
I still don't think it's going to be enough.
Well, we'll see. As for this team's prospects, I think as the Pittsburgh Penguins are, bubble team.
Okay, let's move on to another team that has been kind of a perennial division powerhouse for the last while, the Carolina Hurricanes, who I actually think may have taken a step backwards.
Yes, they did lose some people on the back end, but they brought a few people here. What do we think of the rejigged blue line?
Well, so I don't like it as much. So you've lost, I think, a very underrated defenseman in Brett Pesce. He's off to New Jersey. And Brady Shea signed that big deal in Nashville. So those are two guys that are really important for them that are gone. They brought in Sean Walker, who I think is a serviceable defenseman.
Definitely.
Shane Gossespear will put up some points.
The ghost.
But is he a reliable guy that can play, shut down minutes when needed? He's more of like a bottom pairing guy for the power play, So I don't know. I think that's a downgrade.
The offense up front is going to be leaning heavily on Sebastian Aho. They're hoping for a healthy year out of Svechnikov and a couple of their young, bright stars.
Yeah, so I love what I saw out of Seth Jarvis last year. I think he's got another gear or two in him. And Marty Necas, a lot of rumors about him being dealt. He is re-signed. I don't think he's fully satisfied, but maybe he's going to get the minutes he's craving, and hopefully he can show something this year.
And they're going to need a little bit more of Jesperi Kotkaniemi. He's really got to show that he is not a bust there. He's been given a lot of chances. I think after this year, if he doesn't show something, it could be trouble for him.
Oh, yeah, the old spite signing that they got from Montreal after the Aho business, that really hasn't worked out for them.
And in the crease, they return with Freddie Anderson and
Pyotr Kochekov. He was pretty good. He's a fiery personality. Freddie Anderson off gets hurt, so it's nice to have somebody who can back him up. It'll be interesting to see who ends up taking over that starting job, or if they just run with sort of a 50-50 tandem throughout the year. Not a bad problem to have, whatever the case is.
Yeah, I think in a perfect world, it's Kochetkov that emerges as the starter with Anderson as the reliable backup veteran. But yeah, it's hard to say. Volatile position.
I kind of feel that this team has kind of lost their mojo a little bit, but I do expect them to be in the playoffs guided by Rod Brindamore.
All right, let's move on to Jeff's cup pick from last year, the New Jersey Devils.
Don't remind me.
For you?
Don't remind me.
The Devils were absolutely killed by injuries. 293 man games lost. And listen to this list of guys. Nico Hischier, Dougie Hamilton missed pretty much the whole year. Jack Hughes missed a big chunk of time. Timo Meier missed time. Andre Palat. I mean, just to name a few. That was a devastating year of injuries. Now, they've started the year, and it's kind of more of the same because we've got Luke Hughes and Brett Pesce not ready to start the year. Hopefully that's the end of it, though.
Yes, this team really needs to stay healthy, and they need strong goaltending. The goaltending last season really let them down. We talked about this in our off-season show. They brought in Jacob Markstrom.
Yeah, so this is a guy who was at one time considered one of the best goalies in the league. A little bit older now, but still, I'd say a top-tier goalie, probably in the top third of the league. You think that's fair to say?
Yes, I think that's fair to say. They have nabbed their number one goalie. They also have Jake Allen backing him up, a full season of him. I think that's a pretty good 1-2 punch. It's going to instill a lot of confidence in the skaters of this team.
I think the real excitement, though, is up front with the just absolute stud forwards they have, starting with their best player, Jack Hughes.
Yes, I think Jack Hughes could probably challenge for the Art Ross.
Yes, he was off to a great start last year. It looked like he might do that. This could be the year for him.
Yeah, and he's got a lot of support up front. So they've got guys like Nico Hischier, the captain. They've got Timo Meier, who they're hoping for bigger things from. Of course, he was acquired a couple seasons back and disappointed last year with only 52 points.
They have brought in some reinforcements on defense with Brett Pesce and Brendan Dillon, some sandpaper back there.
Yeah, for sure. That's going to help out. Jesper Bratt also. He's a guy I think can put up a point per game. He's going to really contribute offensively for this group.
Yeah, I think for me, the X factor has got to be Dawson Mercer. Here's a guy 2 years ago, 56 points in 82 games. Looked like he was trending towards maybe becoming like a 60, 70-point guy. Last year, big regression. He played all 82 games. A paltry 33 points. So if he can get back to that form from a couple of years ago, then that's going to be huge for New Jersey.
Not a super active offseason as far as the forward group is concerned. They brought in Stefan Noesen. Thomas Tatar is
he's back for another tour of duty. Good veteran. They also got Paul Cotter, so a little bit more sandpaper back there.
Yeah. They're going to need that if they're going to compete against like a team like the New York Rangers in the playoffs, and that's what they're looking for. I mean, they're looking for playoff success. So can they get there this year?
I think they can. I mean, Sheldon Keefe is the new bench boss there, and he is a very good regular season coach.
Yeah, remains to be seen how far he can get this team in the playoffs, but that's what they're gunning for.
And the last team, the cream of the crop, we all agreed on this one as well. The New York Rangers are looking like the stud of the Metro Division.
And we have to start by talking about the goalies. You guys know I love the goalies. Igor Shesterkin, they've got him. He's the backbone.
Yes, absolutely. Maybe the best goaltender in the world. He'll be backed up again by Jonathan Quick. We'll see how many starts Quick can take because they will need to manage his minutes a little bit, I would say. But, I mean, beyond that, this is a pretty stacked team. Artemi Panarin, one of the top offensive talents in the world, no doubt.
Yeah, what a season last year. 120 points, 49 goals, 71 assists. If he can repeat that kind of year, that's going to be a huge sign of success for the Rangers.
They still have Kreider. They still have Trocheck.
And they still have Zibanejad. They're all 1 year older. So they're going to be leaning a little bit harder, I think, on the youth movement there. What do we think about them? Headed up, of course, by Alex Lafreniere.
Yeah, so he had a bit of a breakout last year, but I think there's another notch or two to go for him. I wonder if he can get some PP1 time. That's been the one thing.
Yeah.
It's been hard for him to break into that unit, but regardless, he brings a physical edge to that forward group that's badly needed.
Yeah, for sure. And Philip Hedl should be healthy this year. He's another young guy that they're looking to step up. Capo Caco is a guy I think they would love to see a lot more from. We've been waiting for his arrival. It has not yet happened.
And maybe slightly lowered expectations for him, but if they can get like a good 40 points out of him and some physical play, I think that would be perfectly acceptable.
Yes, and to round out the roster, we do have to talk about this team's D, headed up by Adam Fox. I mean, this is a guy who can put up 70 points. I wonder if he can maybe do a little bit more. But there's no lack of depth there on the blue line, is there?
Sure, they have Keandre Miller, who played really well last season.
He's still growing his game.
Brendan Schneider.
Yeah, I really like Braden Schneider's game. He's also young. I think there's still, defensemen take a little longer to develop, so I think he's got another gear or two.
What about the captain, Trouba?
Jacob Trouba. Little controversy surrounding Trouba. I wonder how well he's going to play considering what's going on with him.
I think he's a pro. It might be slightly awkward, but if he starts the season strong and the team is playing well, I think those voices will fade away.
Yeah, so this team is essentially running it back from last year, with the exception of the addition of Riley Smith. He's a guy who's performed in the playoffs in the past. So can this team close the deal? That is the question.